Well, welcome back for our final session today. All participants are in listen-only mode. The chat feature is available, and we're recording this session for future on-demand viewing. Do you know what you need to do as a financial professional to serve multicultural markets? Cheryl Brown Hickerson and Bernice Oliver, affectionately known as Coach Mo, well, they do. And we're fortunate enough to have them here to share their insights with all of us. Cheryl's the CEO, of Females in Finance and brokerage manager at PNA Insurance Center. She's also an international speaker, award-winning diversity change agent, and community building strategist specializing in social media and digital marketing for the financial services community. Coach Mo, she's the president and managing consultant of Bernice Oliver International LLC, a professional development firm helping women insurance entrepreneurs launch, build, grow, and scale thriving insurance agencies. She's also founder and executive director of National Association for Advancement of Women in Insurance, a membership-based leadership development organization assisting minority and multicultural women to build stronger and sustainable careers in the insurance industry. I'm happy to turn it over to Cheryl and Coach Mo.
So welcome everyone, and I'm going to get this. Yeah, I feel like I've talked to you more in the last couple of weeks than I have in a while. So it's a pleasure to see you, my friend.
It's always a pleasure as well.
It is. And Bernice and I are very good friends. We both own some membership organizations out there alongside NAFA, and we're all about developing multicultural talent across financial services. So for those of you who may have been a part of the Business Performance Center the last time we spoke about this, you already know, and anybody who's been on any webinar with me, in fact, I'm pretty interactive. So I like to ask questions. I like you to be participative. I want you to use the chat box. I will be trying to check in with that. And with that, what I would like to do, I think Steve did a really good job of already introducing who we are. The two women that are before you here are very devoted to working with women in insurance in some capacity. And I'd like to say financial services as a whole, because I think we're just a little bit more than just being focused in the risk management space. Today, the setup is that I am personally, and I want Mo to talk about this herself. So Bernice, I want you to addend. I am very driven in finding the answers to how do we not only just grow our profession, that actual landscape, if you will, but I also want to do it in a way that's honorable to every person within it. One of the sayings that I have at Females in Finance is that just because I'm focused on saving dolphins does not mean I want to kill whales. There is an ocean out there of work that needs to be done, and it's really going to take all of us. And I know, Bernice, you and I have had some conversations as friends alongside within our organizations. Talk a little bit about that same discussion point that you have over at NAUI.
So, we are dedicated we have like 4 pillars of excellence. And of course, it's leadership, it is growth, community, but most importantly, it's diversity. And I think I have such a unique perspective, and why NAUI really exists is because there weren't opportunities necessarily for someone who looks like me and navigates like me through the insurance industry. And so I knew I couldn't be the only woman feeling this way. I couldn't be. And so I believe why we've been so successful in growing the membership is because there are so many other women out there. And I agree with you, they're not just dolphins. And I have a saying, 2 ducks follow ducks. And so what I mean by that is that we're not always looking for just the ducks. We're looking for the squirrels. And, I really kind of want to look for the deers also. And so we all have these very unique perspectives. However, we have a common theme. And that is the challenge of just navigating and finding our space in such a vast industry like the insurance industry. industry and really having our voices heard. I think that's a very important part too. And I think you have been such a great champion of that. And I'm just really I think I'm standing on your shoulders doing that. So I think that's really why this topic specifically is so very important and so very key as we all move forward.
And I'm going to warn everybody, we got a little love fest here because Marnisa and I very much adore each other. So we get together and we're always like, I heart you back. I heart you back. So
woman crush Wednesday.
I know. There you go. Right. There you go. Good marketing. All right. So I want to talk about a couple topics. The first one is recruitment and how do we reach all the markets that are out there today? Marnise, this is your jam. This is the space that you live within. You want to talk about this a little bit and I'll add some stuff to it later?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, first, I want to kind of share, I love statistics. So before I jump right into that, I do want to share some statistics and why I think it's so important for anyone who is building a financial services business right now in the industry and why, connecting with more diverse audiences is so important. And that's number one, you're losing money. And we're missing opportunities to really grow our customer base. And so I went out and done some research. And so according to Forbes, it says that women's buying power and influences drive 70 to 80% of consumer purchases. And I know that to be true. All of the big purchases in my household, and I'm sure you probably would agree, I made those decisions. Yes, my husband and I have those discussions, but typically the final say is me, right? And so I think that's indicative of, why those diverse communities are so very important. African Americans are 14% of the US population, but we spend 1.2 trillion annually in consumerism. So very key, so very important. And then finally, minority consumer markets have grown faster than buying power of white since 2000, which the biggest increase have been, and I thought this was pretty intriguing, Asian Americans, $986 billion in 2017.
Wow.
So I'm sure we all agree it's very important that we tap into these markets. But as it relates to recruitment, and again, when I'm working with my clients, this is something that we focus on, I highly recommend that you think in terms of when you're building your recruiting strategy, you think more in terms, build it the same way you would your marketing strategy. How are you going to attract, hire, and retain top talent the same way you would to attract, find, and retain top clientele? And so, you build it that same way. Where are they hanging out? One of the big questions when I ask a client, I meet with them and they say, I can't find staff. My first question is, where are you looking? Are you looking in the right places? And I'm sure because again, back to the ducks, we want to work with ducks. However, you often want to think outside of that, and how are we finding individuals who don't necessarily look like us or that are outside of our own circle of influence? What are their pain points? As it relates to looking for new opportunities. One of the biggest things is, as particularly African-American and women of color, is that we just never really considered the financial industry as an industry that we could really grow a thriving career. It just wasn't introduced to us. I can speak for myself in high school or either college. And so I kind of just fell into it, to be honest. It wasn't something that someone said, hey, I really think you need to consider this. Secondly, what are their likes? What are their dislikes? Why did they leave their past positions? What were some of the things that were deal breakers for them? And then, leveraging social media. How are you attracting that top talent? I think oftentimes we put out some kind of, job description, and it's really kind of dull. It's kind of, we copy and paste it from someone else, but it really doesn't show the essence and the culture of our organizations and our businesses. And so if for those of you that are looking right now, you're in that whole looking for new staff, start with reevaluating, your job descriptions and how are you really looking to bring those individuals and indoctrinate them into your culture.
I love it. So one of the things that I like to refer back to when it comes to recruitment is I'm a marketing specialist. And when I look at how people market and what they're marketing, what that looks like, I was at the Association of National Advertisers meeting about guess it's been about 5 or 6 years ago now. And I was sponsored by Prudential. They brought us into a bunch of us in to hear from a lot of different brands. And I want you to imagine in 2014, 2015, they were sitting there talking, and this is like McDonald's and Walmart and PepsiCo and AmFam. And there's just these enormous amounts of different brands that are out there talking about exactly what Bernice is saying, going out and looking for individuals that don't necessarily look like you, unconscious bias, that may not be who you've traditionally worked with, sold with, hired. And my ears perked up because one of the things that came from McDonald's, they said, if you haven't noticed, almost none of our advertising anymore actually has anybody Caucasian in it. And I took a pause and I started thinking about that for a second. And I thought, you know what, you're right. And it was because they had a behavioral marketing specialist there that also said, and that was because a lot of times we have been so sold to over the years as, if you fall in that market, that we already infuse ourselves into the space because we just assume it's for us. Myrnie said something they have to see, there has to be representation in that space. And if that's the case, how is it taking what Myrnice just said and applying it to your recruitment efforts? And that is whether you're recruiting advisors, people, whoever in your office, but also recruiting new business into your book of business. What does that look like today? Because if you're not showing representation through that, and I'm going to tell you right now, Jackie Morales from Bestow had me one time come to a meeting in Chicago, and there was an unconscious bias training. And I remember kind of lingering in the back, and there was a DEI specialist from Bank of America. And she asked everybody in the room, does anybody here have unconscious bias? And it was funny because I think 3 people raised their hand. And she says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't ask that correctly. So let me think of it a different way. Does anybody here have unconscious bias? It was literally the same question, but she said it with a different fluctuation in her voice. And like maybe 6 hands went up. She goes, okay, the hint is everybody please just raise your hand, because that's the answer to it. Because it's just what we do. It's not wrong or right. It's how things have happened behaviorally as we've grown up. But once you know better, you do better. And you have to stress that like a muscle. It has to be something that you, look at and quantify against it every time. When I started Females in Finance, as an example, one of my number one concerns from a recruitment effort, recruiting members in, was how do I make certain I just don't go create a white women's club, your middle-aged white women's club? Yeah, I mean, I'm being really honest because there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of them. And this is going to be real hard talk here, friends, today. This isn't going to be, we're not going to talk about things like in whispers or anything. We're going to get front and center, because if we don't, we can't change dialogues. We can't be better. We just keep doing some of the stuff we were doing. And I remember I called Jocelyn Wright, and who's a very good friend of mine, said, how do I make certain I don't do this? And her response to me was probably one of the most loving things anybody's ever said to me, because she said, thank you for asking. Let me help you. And that is what every person on here, what are there right now? There's 54 participants on this call. 54 of you have an opportunity right now to be a person of action. It's a big thing for me. And that is, if this sounds like you or you've done this, and that's pretty much all of us, then we need to do something to stress ourselves against that so that we help change happen within our profession. And I was the first one. And for those of you who don't know me well, I have 6 kids now because I got married and I added a bonus boy to it. But my 5 kids, 4 of them are children of color. This is a life that I live every day, and yet still my unconscious bias is still there, and I have to stress against it every single day. So to that point, that, in all of the statistics that Bernice gave, how often are we actually stressing ourselves against it? Because oftentimes when I've gone into organizations and I've asked this question, and Mo and I we joke around about this, I say to them, so do you work with women? 100% they say, yes, I do. I mean, Bernice, I know you've had this too. And yet if you looked in the book of business, and I thumbed through it, yeah, not so much.
Or if I go to your website or your social media,
Yeah.
It's not representative of what you just said. That's one of the things that I tell a lot of my clients when I'm consulting with them. You know, I know what your culture is about just based on your digital imprint. And I look at everyone, I kind of vet you before I ever get on the phone with you. And so I know what you're all about before we have this conversation. And it's very clear, you know, what you're for based on what you're putting out. What does your company website say? Is there diversity reflected there, or is it not? And I think that is what I think right now, particularly where we are in 2021, the pandemic has changed all of us. I think, you know, last year was a very tough year, but we've all changed. And so if you're looking to really attract top talent, we have to rethink the way that we've traditionally sought to hire and find new people. I think I shared this last time about the peer-to-peer, having the panel interviews and why that was so very important. Again, we all tend to lean towards, you know, finding someone that we really gel with, right? That we find would be a perfect fit for our culture. But are they? Because is that really the best person for the position? Are their strengths and their talents going to be a complement to what I call your GTSA, your gifts, talents, skills, and abilities? Or are you just looking for someone that's a yes person and they're just going to be a robot and do the same things that you are? If you're doing that, then you're hurting your opportunity to really grow and sustainable growth, because you're not really moving beyond that normal, you know, thought process. You have to think outside of that.
Yeah. No, I love that. The next one on here we talk about is training, because we want to make certain that it reaches everyone out there. One of the things that I have also in working with organizations have asked, do you make training? And I asked this very specifically as a reason. Do you make training available to everyone? Because it's almost rhetorical, because I know without a shadow of a doubt, high 90%, they're going to say yes. And then I asked them to redefine what everyone means to them. What does that mean, everyone? Is it everyone from the person who's in mail or answering the phones? Or is that just your mid-managers, your Superman, your supervisors and managers? Is it I'm really trying to get specific on it, because if we don't, this is what happens. The little sign up, and I'm going to go old school, the sign up sheet goes around the office. And what happens is sometimes there's a subculture where, let's say Bernice is sitting next to me and I get the sign up sheet and I just walk right past Bernice and hand it to the next person, because my unconscious bias might not be, oh, I'm supposed to hand it to Bernice. And, you know, this entire session isn't about being a better person. You're a good person. This is about understanding that there's a bias in place in so many different areas that you've got to stress yourself against. And so you've got it there, but then you also have it in your management offices, who, when those training sheets come back or those opportunities, and all of a sudden you start looking around the training room and everybody looks kind of the same. And by kind of the same, we're talking about middle-aged white male professionals. I don't want to sit here and mince words. We're talking about what I call the PMS factor, the pale, male, and stale factor that's happening out there. Not that it's wrong, but what we're expecting now, and it needs to happen, is for someone to stop and say, does this look right? Does this, because if this isn't what's out in the office and this is what's here, we've got a problem when it comes to training. And more often we have to say this. One of the counter arguments that I've heard in this regard is, well, Cheryl, the best person for the job. I love that one. Because you're right. You should have the best people for the job. However, can you do that outside of unconscious bias? That's one of the questions that many of us are asking in organizations like Bernice's or like mine, that we're trying to stress against it, to make certain that you have the absolute best talent that is out there. And so, Bernice, you do a lot in training world.
I do, yes. And I think you hit on a lot of things that I wanted to talk a little bit about. I just love this topic, first of all. And so I'm very passionate about it. But, you know, the unconscious bias, I think first, it's important that everyone that's on this call, 57 or so people, that we really be honest with ourselves and agree that we all have unconscious bias. We do, all of us. I think it's important to share that you share your Stacey Abrams story. I think that's
you want to do it now?
I think you have to share that,
okay,
so that we can build more. Yes,
okay,
please.
yeah. All right, so this is what happened. I was on Twitter and I love Stacey Abrams, like in a very woman crush Wednesday effect again. The reason why I'm getting outside the politics has nothing to do with it. It has to do with when one woman went and changed an entire course of the structure of how something happened. I always tell everybody, don't tick off women. We do stuff. Okay. So, and that's exactly what happened is she went on a mission to get something done and she did. I went on Twitter to give her some props. And what I said was, you go, gal. I am so proud of watching you work hard to get what you want. To which I got at least 10 direct messages on my inboxes, which was, yeah, don't say gal. That's very, very rude.
No.
And I
Because it's
was
considered to be derogatory,
yeah,
particularly in
oh,
the South. And she's a
yeah,
woman from the South, and I am too. And it still kind of bites me, even though I know the place that it comes from you,
yeah,
but it bites every time I hear it. And so, or girl, you know, because it was meant to be derogatory or demean women, you know, back many, many years ago. And so, and even still today. And so it's very challenging. And so I think that was important that we share that, because it wasn't something that we intentionally do, but we unconsciously just share it and say it, not realizing that, wait a minute, the context or the cultural context from which that word derives. So thank you.
and you
for
know,
sharing.
I took it, Bernice, at the time when it happened. It's funny because I could see where if somebody came back to somebody and said, hey, don't say that. Well, I was trying to be good. I was trying to help. We immediately put defense up. And instead of doing that and building that wall, really, really work with yourself internally to say, why am I building that wall? And instead I said, help me understand, because I clearly did not mean it in any derogatory manner. Anybody who knows me. And I took some time and I learned. I went back to my daughter, Melissa, and I was like, did you know this? And here in Missouri, she didn't. She's like, I didn't, but now I'm learning. So here I've got my daughters out learning, hey, okay, I got to be a little bit more conscientious of it. And I realized that some of the time is this isn't a cancel culture kind of thing. We can't say, instead it's a opening your mind thing that, hey, in different areas and different situations, certain things are just not, they're not good. They're not good. And you learn. And that was a training for me as in my human part of it. And I actually talked to Bernice about it because I was like, I would never do this to, and she goes, no, but this is why. And so it opened it up and it got dialogue going, not only internally for me and my family, but of course professionally as well. So I think that's really important.
And I thought that was a great segue to talk about the whole training, because, you know, when we're developing, and I developed a lot of online courses and staff, sales training and so forth, but really asking, employees what they need rather than assuming. Here's what has been my experience. It's always been a bit reactive as opposed to proactive, the learning development opportunities that we tend to decimate to our workforce. And then also I have this thing that I say, show me the money. And what I mean by that is, what's in it for me? How is this going to help me advance whatever it is that I'm looking to do? The number one reason that employees will leave a company, where there are a couple, but one of the number one reasons is that there is no opportunity for growth and advancement to move forward. And so how is it that why is this training relevant to help me accomplish what it is that I want to accomplish? Particularly when I see Joe sitting next to me, he's not invested in himself. He's not done any of this training that I needed to do, and he's still being able to advance. Those are the things that is challenging as I see as it relates to training. And really, and I think another part of it too, and I think we talked about this again, it's kind of hard to hear, but it's the honest to God truth. The training sometimes can be used for punitive measures. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity. Yes, we sell it as, you really want to get these designations. You really want to work on this training. You want to do these things for advancement opportunities and development. However, you also want to use it against me if I don't have it.
Yeah.
Even though I may have the skill set, even though I may have the experience, even though, and it has happened to me multiple times where I've, sat in my boss's desk, or I've worked his desk. I had a boss that went out for cancer once, and I worked his desk for about 6 months. And when it came an opportunity for me to apply for his position, they said I wasn't qualified, but I worked his desk for half a year. I led his team. So it was those types of things. And then another thing is, right now there's this buzzword, micro learning. And what I mean by that, we tend to, develop wonderful, robust, courses, but they are so long and they're so overwhelming. And right now, the consumer, your workforce, really is not looking for that. They can't connect with it. And then it becomes, let me just get it done and do the little click thing. And I know we've all done it. Y'all know what I mean? You just click, 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 get through it, rather than investing in bite-sized micro learning sessions and deliver it in time, maybe at a self-paced program, some sort, or a longer length of time. Another big thing is that we all have this thing in our hands, right? So this is, our own personal computer. And so making it mobile, an opportunity that I don't have to sit in front of my desk. I can listen to it as a podcast, or maybe listen to it on my commute home, or when I'm working out, or whatever it is, but multiple ways to be able to deliver that training and then feed the people. There's this new, I know you guys have, everyone's heard about it. Clubhouse is this huge thing that's kind of taking over, right? And the biggest thing is that you can join the conversation at any time. It doesn't require you to be, attached to my desk or to my laptop. I can carry it with me. I can, walk around and get my exercise and still be part of the conversation. And so I say, make training just a part of your company culture. Personalize it specifically for your workforce. Give your employees time and space to really get the training done. And also the training and promotion for, showing how it's going to incorporate more engaging training methods so that those individuals see an opportunity to use it for their own advancement.
When I started Females of Finance, Bernice, I interviewed about just a little under 400 women. I asked them questions around recruitment training and some of the other topics we're going to talk about. Specifically to the training, one of the things I found really interesting was this idea of reactive versus proactive training. And what I mean by that, and I know you get it, but for those who are here too, and when I asked the question, what kind of training did you, go after? From a designation perspective, women were, literally eating up and getting these designations because somewhere along the course of their work, they found out that, I got to have my CLU, or I got to have my CHFC and my, all these different things. And yet, when we actually looked comparatively to those who are being advanced, which will be the next topic we're going to talk about and sort of segues into it, increasingly we found that was not actually the case of what was happening for those being advanced. Overwhelmingly, the men were not having these designations.
No.
And
or
so
they worked on it once they were advanced.
And it goes back to that thing. I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, where they had the article about how, women feel like they have to have 100% of what's on, a job list before they go apply, and men were like, 20%, we got it, we're good. And, and some people came back to me and said, in another time when I've talked about this, they said, well, they were just very aggressive. And I thought, okay, or assertive, too, is another one I heard. That might be the case, but going back to what Bernice's point was of understanding how information, or how people are going out for their recruitment and their training, I think once you know better, you do better. And that's where I see people go out and they'll post on LinkedIn as an example, and they'll say, wanting to grow their offices. Do you know, and Bernice, I know I told this to you when we first met, I will literally go out and look at those individuals' websites to see how many admins they have and call them and say, why would you not move the people who are already into your people, your processes, your policies, and advance them? And overwhelmingly, they say to me, well, they just want a steady paycheck, or they just want this, instead of offering flexibility to the person. Right? Oh, your sound went away real quick.
Oh, am I okay?
There you go. Now you're good.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, absolutely. I've had that same experience. There's another company, there's an insurance company I was working with over in Alabama, but They had 21, it was a huge insurance company, commercial insurance, and they had 21 sales service individuals, all women, but they only had one woman executive, one woman leader.
Yeah.
And I thought, are you serious? However, yes, they were actively recruiting for individuals to, operate at that executive leadership level, but they had no women. But they had women who had been with the company 5, 10, 20, 12, the longest, I think she'd been there 17 years.
Yeah.
And had not been afforded the opportunity for advancement. And so as we were talking about it, it was about the training. It was about the accessibility.
Yeah.
And being recognized that there was an opportunity to train because you're already indoctrinating into the culture, but that you were the most obvious choice for advancement over someone else.
Exactly. And it leads right into advancement, which is the next part of this, because one of the things I want to talk about real quick is equity. Sometimes this tends to get a little lost on folks, and I want to explain it to you with my ice cream story. This is how I share it. So I have 2 grandsons that are identical twins. And then I have 2 granddaughters that are just 2 months apart from each other, but they always think that they're twins because they all are together, right? So you got the 2 sets of the kids. And they'll come over to my house. I have 9 grandkids. We have ice cream and snacks. Okay. This is the way it rolls here at the Hickersons. And so I scooped out ice cream for Jace and for Carter. They're 12. And I scooped out ice cream for Avery and Roya. And Avery, without missing a beat, walked up to me and said, "Grandma, I want the same that Jace has." And Jay said, "You can't have the same. I'm bigger." And I said, "Well, she can." I'm like, she's actually got like 20 pounds on her brother. She's almost the same. She's a big girl. And I said, no, you're right. And so the boys at first were like, "She gets the same as me?" And I said, "Yeah, but guess what? It doesn't come out of their bowls. It comes out of the ice cream container. So just because I'm giving her more doesn't mean that they got less." And as soon as that connected and clicked for them that they had the same, everybody was great. That's equity.
Great
And
analogy.
right. And she wanted the same amount. And that is one of the things that we have to be very cognizant of, which is, are we offering equitable advancement opportunities? Bernice, you were talking about advancement before. Talk some more about this one, because I know this is another area that you're super passionate about.
Absolutely. As someone who had to take it upon herself to kind of branch out and start her own, organization with the National Association for Advancement of Women and do my own, professional development organization. The reason I left, and I worked for a lot of the big major companies on the personal line side, was the opportunity for me personally was not there. And I felt that I had to move beyond the constraints of the normal selection process of being told that I'm not qualified or being overlooked for opportunities. And so what I found my biggest challenge, and I think we talked about this before, is friends and family. And so first of all, I think we all of us here in the industry have to move beyond the friends and family syndrome. And what I mean by that is I'm going to hire my cousin's brother or sister, brother to come in and work, whether they're qualified or not. And oftentimes they are not. Or, I'm going to hire my next door neighbor's son because I'm just going to give him a chance. He's a great kid. I think he's wonderful. He needs an opportunity. I get that. I do get that. And I get that we have to support our community. But why are we doing that to the detriment of those who have been there, who have worked, who have paid their dues, who have done the things necessary to be recognized, only to be overlooked? And so oftentimes I know in the industry, we say, "Oh, we promote from within." Do you really? Do you really promote from within? Or are we still ducks picking ducks? And I think that's oftentimes what happened. The reason why there is still less than 1% of women who occupy the C-suite opportunities in the insurance industry is still because ducks still pick ducks. They're not looking to pick peacocks. And that's just what is happening. And I think also the greatest challenge is expanding our pool and looking beyond the obvious selection sources. And so again, is it just because John sat next to me for 10 years? Is he really the most obvious choice and most qualified choice? Or should I be looking for someone else within the organization who has done the things necessary to get the experience that they need to occupy these positions? Here's another challenge that I see. Oftentimes, we don't have advocates. I was listening to CNN, this has been several years ago, and the woman who is the CEO of Pepsi, she was stepping down because she was a big advocate of the whole lean in thing. And she came back and said, you know what? I was wrong. The whole lean in thing is not, a lot of women were losing their mind and, oh my God, I'm not leaning in, I'm not doing the right thing. And so we all just kind of went crazy about the whole lean in thing. And she said, what I found is that I really couldn't do it all. I really couldn't raise a family and do all the things that I wanted to do and run this company. So I'm stepping back. And they asked her, what was her one biggest regret? And she said it was because I failed to advocate and create my own successor, to support another woman to take my place. And she's right. Another woman did not take her place. It was a man who took her place. And so again, how are we advocating? Who's advocating for us in those rooms that we don't have access to? I have this saying inside of my group over at NOWI, is that big thinkers meet in small rooms. However, oftentimes, we're not part of those conversations. And so we need allies. I love your concept of having male allies for females in finance. I think that's so very key and so very important, because we need someone who's advocating for us in those rooms that we don't have access to. And then finally, I'm sorry, one more thing, adding transparency and commitment to equity. Here's what I find. I just wrote a blog about this too. I posted it Monday. And it's about, we do a lot of lip service. We do a lot of, research about DEI initiatives and how we're going to do them. And then nothing really, really happens beyond the normal once a year required training that we all are required to do. And I think we have to now, today is the day, and now is the time for us to say, okay, now we've been talking about these programs and these opportunities for many, many years. Now it is time for execution and implementation. And that's what I'm all about. I'm about execution. What are we going to do to move and push this initiative forward? And so that's how we make sure that there are equitable opportunities, being transparent, being committed to the process, and then having a fair appeal process for those individuals who feel that they may have, been overlooked for an opportunity that they're qualified for.
So I want to addend a couple things. I always speak in analogies. I laugh because like my ice cream thing, but you mentioned the Male Ally Network. The MAN Initiative came about because when I interviewed those women during that research phase, I found that when I asked an intrinsic value question of, do you feel successful? One of the other questions I had asked during that research phase was, did you ever have a male ally as part of your history of your work? Overwhelmingly, the majority of those who felt they were successful at some point had a male ally. So I knew that that was going to be a very important part. And the male ally needed to also be a diverse metric as well, because we need them from all areas within financial services, from different backgrounds, et cetera. And so the MAN Initiative came to be, which just stands for Male Ally Network. Or if you're in my house, my husband always says, I am the man. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, Daryl.
He is the man. But anyway.
He is. So interestingly enough, Carla Harris wrote a book and she talks about having a sponsor in the room. And that is exactly what Mernice is telling everybody. If you do not take the responsibility, if you are someone who falls within the DEI parameters and you don't have a sponsor, get one. And what that means is wherever those decisions, those big thinkers are having, if you can't be in those rooms, is your responsibility to have somebody in there advocating for you. Read Carla Harris's book. She talks very much about this concept of having this sponsor. And I do say that oftentimes I was advanced through my career because I took responsibility for having the sponsor speak up for me. And I think that part of our organization, we knew that in order for us to go further and faster at Females in Finance, we needed to embrace male allyship. And as long as those men wanted to be along for the ride of seeing feminine diverse talent do well, it's all worked out really well, really well. One of the things too that you mentioned, Bernice, talking about organizations, I want to talk about subculture when it comes to advancement. So one of the things that Bernice opened this up with at this particular point in our chat today was about how you have a tendency to bring in your cousin, your neighbor, your if you're a larger organization and you think that your staff is not talking about that, FYI, that's called subculture, that you're totally snowing yourself. I am telling you right now that they will smile at you and go, great, your next door neighbor who came from a completely other industry, but now has a management position. Okay. And they turn around and they look at each other. And it's at that point, oftentimes disconnect happens. And they know that you're not promoting within, as she mentioned, you're promoting within what your family. That does not necessarily mean that they're always the best people for the job. And I think that for us to totally dismiss subculture is an enormous loss of the opportunity to talk to all 60 of us have this powwow right now. It's happening. And I know that you've talked about it in some of the things that you've done, Mo.
Yeah, I think the challenge is, again, for all of us, is the unconscious bias. But again, we're just more comfortable with people who look like us, walk like us, talk like us, think like us. And it is uncomfortable. This conversation today is not the most comfortable conversation. And that's why it's not often had. And I think why we haven't had as much advancement opportunities as we should, because it's just challenging. It's uncomfortable, but also it requires us to have self-reflection. And nobody wants to admit, even though it doesn't mean that we're a bad person, but it means that some of our ways of thinking and our own bias has prohibited us from looking beyond what my granny would say, the front of your nose. and it really impedes our own opportunities to be able to build and grow thriving businesses and thriving careers, because we're not looking beyond the obvious, i.e. the front of our nose. We're not doing that. We're not expanding that pool. So that is the biggest challenge, I think. And I think, conversations like this one has always been and always will be the linchpin for true change and true transformation. And so I think we really all need to think about how we can have more of these conversations, open and honest. Again, back to your ice cream analogy, because we want diversity, equity, and inclusion, it doesn't mean that we want to take something away from someone else. That's not what we're looking for. But I would like to have the same amount of ice cream that someone else has as well. I'm going to steal that, by the way. I'll give you credit, but I'm going to steal that in my training.
You steal it. My grandkids were the ones who I sat there. I was like,
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And so I think that's so very, very important. But again, it's just these conversations that are just a little bit uncomfortable. And but having those open and honest dialogues is where the true change and transformation is going to happen.
I know we're talking about next steps next. I have a big saying in my family about being a person of action. Gosh, if my kids were here, they're like, oh, she's going to it. She's going there. Because I always say to them, they're going to do something. I'm like, how do you become a person of action to do that? And my son's 32 for reference. And he's like, I hear you, Mom. You sound like you're doing personal development. I'm like, I am. But I think too often we hear really good, juicy information. We move away from it and then we do nothing. I've joked around with some things I've said before, and I'll own it, because we're not good at numbers in financial services. We have fintech for that. We're amazing at apathy. Like, I'm pretty sure if I went to the dictionary and looked up the word apathy, a financial service professional doing nothing, right there it is. We go back to those really comfortable slippers and keep walking. And instead, what we're doing is we're challenging you to think different, to be a little different. One of the things, for example, in this person of action thing, I've said on large stages, and that is, for example, we tell communities of professionals to go out in underrepresented communities, and they don't even know if they're armed with the right words to say Black or African American. We need to talk about it. It needs to be a dialogue that needs to be had. And you need to have people that you can go to and ask, am I using my words right? Am I ever going to say gal again? No. Am I going to, because if we don't learn how to normalize our language, we're going to go back to apathy. You're not a person of action. You just spent an hour here with us and nothing changed. And I think that that's really important. I know that if anybody's a person of action, it is Mernice Oliver. She makes stuff happen. How about you, Mernice? What's some of your next steps on this?
I think for me, again, it's about showing up differently.
Love it.
And what I mean by that is that really reassessing my own unconscious bias. How am I? Because I believe I can't do better and I can't expect someone else to do better. I teach that to my kids. The same thing. I can't expect you to do something better if I'm not going to do it for myself. I talk about that often. You know, I don't teach and train theory. I teach and train experience. And so I can't teach and train you something that I haven't done. So I don't do that. And it's the same concept. So if I am not willing to tackle my own unconscious bias, if I am not willing to extend that olive branch and really listen, because I think listening is the key to everything when you're having these conversations, and have more conversations. One of the things, and I'll share this really, really quick story last year, you know, during the whole George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, I had one single Caucasian girlfriend to reach out to me and say, "Are you okay? Are you okay? I know you have a son. He's 22. He is. And there's a lot going on right now. How can I help you?" That meant the world to me. However, I think it's the same. I'm responsible for doing that same thing as I'm reaching across the aisle for other mothers who, you know, another mother in my community who just lost her son to suicide, you know, or my Asian American colleagues who, you know, who are experiencing a lot of attacks. So all of those things, am I doing those same types of things? And so I think it's about really, really not just talking the talk. I think I talked about that earlier, the lip service, but really walking that walk and engaging those uncomfortable situations. I mean, uncomfortable conversations, but going there with a listening and open heart. I can hear all day in my ears what you're saying, but I have to listen to you from my heart. So I think that's the biggest part, is what I want to do. More and also sharing my own perspectives. Oftentimes, I think we're afraid to share how we truly, truly feel, is that we feel that we will be seen, as you said, the whole gal conversation, you know, am I being attacked? Am I being closed-minded about it? Or is it really, I just need to listen and understand the other person's perspective. And so I think for me, it's about doing those things, open and honest conversations, but also sharing the perspectives and then listening more.
I love that. I really love that. And, you know, really quick too, I know that there's a question here in the box and it's what we're here for. We want to make sure we open this up to some dialogue for a few moments. And Stephen, I think it's going to help field some of that. But, you know, one of the ways you don't help in this, and I saw this happen a lot during February. Please, Black History Month. I had a lot of individuals privately come to me and say, I'm tired. I am tired of being the face, the voice that carries the load of something like that, because this isn't a month for me, it's my life. And I heard that, and yet I had someone who I love and respect, and she said, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. So I also think too, to Mernice's point about understanding other people's perspectives, sometimes the best way to get involved to help isn't to ask them to do more. It's to see what's going on. I mean, you might add some words on there too, real quick, Mernice, but that was an overwhelming response I heard in February.
You know, I think I agree, but oftentimes, sometimes we have to be the first. Sometimes you just do. You just have, you know, I'm the first to really own, and my family to own and operate a successful business. And so sometimes we have to go in to be the first so that we can open the door for others. And so I agree. We're all a little bit weary, but don't grow weary in doing well. I've always believed that. And so, no, I don't want to be the face of Black History Month. I don't, because I'm the face. This is my face every day, right? So, and I can't change this face. I've lived in this face for over 50 years. And so I'm okay with having those questions, but I don't desire to be the poster girl for any type of initiative. But I think, again, that goes back to understanding someone else's perspective, whereas I think we're just trying to help. There are so many allies who don't look like me, like you, Cheryl, who truly want to help, but you don't really know how. So again, asking, what is your perspective and how can I support these initiatives and support you? So my kudos to you again. Love you, girl. You know, I think you're doing a phenomenal job, amazing job of what you do. And you know, as I said earlier, I stand on your shoulders to build, you know, NOWI and the success that we have based on what you're doing at Females in Finance.
All right, Stephen.
I want to thank both of you, and I know we're at a close, but there is a question on the chat, and I know you want to get to that question. So let's just get real quickly, you know, what is one way, each of you, to find a DEI sponsor?
I'll go first real quick. And that is, what I did was I went to someone that I trusted and said, I need you to hold me responsible to DEI metrics. And she did. And so I report to her on a quarterly basis, you know, where I'm at. And then she gives me directives and becomes sort of an advisor, a DEI advisor for me with reference to our membership organization.
Awesome.
And I think really the same, but I'm a little, well, I did a little bit of the same, but a little bit different. And so I created my own personal board of advisors, and they are not individuals that look like me, that hold me accountable for my walk, to be sure that, yes, I am upholding the metrics that I said, my DEI metrics that I said that I want to uphold, but also to listen to different perspectives. So I have men, I have women, they're all ages and races. And so I think that's so important because it helps me to, again, walk the path that I said I wanted to walk.
Yep.
Thank you. Oh, I think everyone can join me in a woo-wee. Wasn't this a fantastic day 2 of NAIFA's first DEI Impact Week? I mean, this is so awesome. The dialogue was so great, you know, and all the things that we heard today from ACLI, who shared how they're approaching diversity, equity, and inclusion in its efforts with advocacy and their newly emerging protocols and opportunities, right? The opportunities found in investing in underserved communities. We were introduced to why and how to best serve those veterans who serve us, and why it's such an incredibly meaningful decision to aim our businesses toward delivering to minority consumer markets overall. And I know everyone wants to thank you, Coach Mo, and you, Cheryl Hickerson, for throwing things on the table and encouraging us to confront ourselves, and for all of your gems of wisdom to confront our unconscious biases to do better for others and ourselves. Like, as for me, I decided to confirm my belief of its importance by shaping my company's deliverables and by writing a book. And hold me accountable, baby. And I thank all of you for
watch
stepping
out
up.
what you say there. We might.
I know.
And I thank all of you, everyone on this call, for stepping up to make an impact in your own very special way. So mahalo, thank you all. Thank you to all of you who stepped up yesterday and today, our second day, to ensure that we're making impact, because indeed we can, and indeed we are. As our time together comes to a close and we leave a full day to my fellow Hawaiians, a great afternoon to our West Coasters, and great evening and night for those of you in the Midwest and East Coast, please expect to receive our daily survey in your inbox. To be at our best, we need your comments and feedback. And we appreciate you for looking out and responding to it. Now with that, I look forward to seeing all of you for another priceless day, our third and final day of DEI Impact Week, and that's tomorrow at noon Eastern. Until then, aloha and mahalo. My love and gratitude to you all.